This is Pastor Craig Brown from First Free Methodist Church in Seattle. I want to welcome you to our new podcast called Connections. This is the time for us to be in conversation with people, either part of our congregation's life, on our staff, maybe people in our community, people who are doing great things that we think folks want to know about here, not only at our church in North Queen Anne, but also across the city of Seattle and the region. And so today, my very special guest on our inaugural episode is our Director of Family Ministry, and that is Hannah Huskey. And Hannah's been on our staff for a couple of years. She originally came on our staff when she was an intern with our Fostering Hope program. And then from there began doing more and more work with our families. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, transitioned into becoming our Family Ministry Director. That involves working with children, yes, but it also mostly involves working with our families as a whole. And so she is a graduate of Seattle Pacific University from a little over a year ago, and I'm going to let her tell you more in a minute about what she's doing for school right now and kind of where she's headed. So, Hannah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm excited to be the first one. I feel very special.
It's the inaugural episode. How could you not be excited? I know I'm excited, and we're going to get through this fine. So, tell me a little bit about what life looks like for you right now. What's the story? What's going on?
Life's busy. I'm obviously working here with Family Ministries, and I'm also a full-time student. I'm getting my master's right now at the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology. So one day I'll have my master's in counseling psychology, but right now I'm headed into my second year. So
how many years is the program altogether?
3 years.
3 years. And of the 3 years, which is going to be the most challenging year, do you think?
This year.
This year.
Yeah.
All right, the one you're getting ready to start pretty soon. So it's a lot to juggle, going to school and working. I did it when I was in college and seminary. It's just not easy to do, but we adapt, we figure it out. So, and you're also a newlywed.
I am, yes. I got married last November, so I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary with my husband.
All right. And what does your husband do?
He is in the Navy, and he's deployed right now. He's been deployed for quite a while, and we're just hoping that he's home for our 1-year anniversary.
All right. That's a good hope.
Yeah.
In the meantime, without your husband at home, who's keeping you company in the house?
My 2 cats, Hampton and Huey.
Hampton and Huey. How did they get their names?
Hampton is a Siamese, so I thought he was very bougie. So I named him after the Hamptons.
Excellent.
Huey is a shelter cat, and he's just kind of funny looking, so we thought Huey was a good name for him.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. There's you could do Huey from Disney, Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Yeah.
Or my generation, Huey Lewis and the News, which is a music group.
Okay.
You have no idea. You have no idea what I'm talking about. We're crossing the generational Rubicon right here between us. All right. Well, good. I'm glad school seems to be going well. Ministry is really flourishing here at First Free. But one of the reasons I wanted you to be the first guest on this is because I sometimes think in the life of our congregation, most people, and I think this is true in a lot of churches, they think family ministry is what they see on a Sunday morning. It's like, how many children are here? How many families are here? They look around whatever worship space they're in, a sanctuary, a worship center, and that's how they judge what's going on. And I think there's a deeper story to tell here because there's things happening in family ministry that may not be as evident to people. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you right at the outset is, what do you see God doing here at FFMC with family ministry?
That's a really good question because we absolutely don't see the full extent of what God is doing in family ministries on Sunday mornings. I feel like God has really opened up doors for ministry to happen during the week here at FFMC, and that work is relational. That work is not an attractional work where families are coming to large events. They're coming to form community together, have dinners together, and especially with our NQACC families, have really low-pressure, casual get-togethers, and that's where I've been seeing the Holy Spirit at work here at FFMC.
As part of that, do you think that there's, within the families at least live in our community, is there some sense of need for connection? Do you feel like families are a little more isolated now?
Yes, yeah. I especially after COVID, and we're back into normal life now, but I'm still not seeing the same connections that families were once having. It's also really easy to be isolated here in the city with your little family unit. It's hard to find meaningful connection with other parents of young children because that's a busy stage of life for them. So they really desire that time together, and it's rare.
Yeah, it's hard to find. And I remember when my kids were really young, when they were like, preschool age, even younger, elementary, the families that we were with that had children of that same age at that same time in life, those were somehow bonds between our families that have endured over years. My kids are in their late 20s now, and we're still connected to those families and to those people whose kids, all of our kids were the same age, versus, other relationships I've had with families and churches whose kids were not that age. So there's something about that moment in life that just forms connection and community. And it's a wonderful thing, but it's hard for me to explain. It just happens.
Yeah, I would say parents are kind of in the trenches together when their kids are young.
Yeah.
It's a lot of sleepless nights, so having someone to support each other is essential.
Yeah, that makes sense. So as you're looking at family ministry and the way it's kind of begun to emerge in what I would call like a somewhat unorthodox fashion for a church, right? That certainly wasn't our plan.
No.
We didn't see like a non-Sunday thing occurring. So talk with us a little bit about how that was a bit of a surprise and what you did with that.
Yeah. First of all, I think it's really hard to have a plan when you're working in ministry. You can have goals and you can have a plan, but I really think ultimately it's what it's the path that God has set out for this church and for me as a leader, and then for our families as well. And no, I didn't foresee any of the way we're doing ministry now was not something that I foresaw happening when I first started here. But I feel as though it is more empowering for families to interact with God and experience the Holy Spirit in their lives in this way.
Say more about that. What do you mean? How is it empowering for them? First of all, it's low pressure. So their spiritual curiosity is being fostered in a way that's comfortable and safe for them. Whereas on a Sunday morning, there might be a bit of pressure to follow the order of worship, sit in church, for kids to be quiet in church, or to get here at a certain time. Even that's hard for families. So being able to come in a really casual, low-pressure environment, and the only goal being to form relationships with other families, with staff here, with especially at the daycare, with their teachers and other community members in Queen Anne, that's an environment where families feel safe and heard. So you're kind of naming some of the adaptations you've had to make, too. So to make those adaptations, it's like not on a Sunday morning, it's a different day, stuff like that. What other adaptations can you think of that you've had to make to kind of address what is this different way of engaging with families?
Yeah, we've had to be flexible. I would say as much of a planner as I am, working with families is unique in that timing is not always going to be the same every time. I have to be willing to make changes to the things that we're doing to accommodate the people in our community. Specifically, with Camp Rooted and Raised, we also had to offer transportation because some of those families didn't have a way to get to the church. So we have to be flexible in a lot of different ways to meet their needs.
Excellent. And we're going to talk about Camp Rooted and Raised in just a minute, because I think that's one of the most important adaptations we've made. All right, so I want in this segment for us to talk just about Camp Rooted and Raised, which we did this last summer, end of July, beginning of August. A lot of churches, when they think about their summer program for families, their default setting is Vacation Bible School. Mm-hmm. And over the years I've served in churches, I've had Vacation Bible Schools practically in every congregation I've served. It's a big event. A couple of my churches, we would have 200-300 children at mm-hmm. VBS. But the thing that I always found interesting is we'd spend a whole week doing VBS. We would have all of these families come from the community. We would do everything we could to find out who those families were, how to connect with them, invite them back. We would do sometimes musicals on Sunday morning during mm-hmm. worship with a barbecue after to get them to come back. Yeah. But we found time and time again, after every single one of those, is not one of those families stayed. Yeah. And it wasn't the fact that our congregation was inhospitable. It wasn't some other factor, because it was true in every congregation, in every city I was in. And what happened is we just spent a ton of time in our church with volunteers and people helping, and just basically cooking those people for a week, helping to put on something that really, in the end, had no transformational value, at least in the life of our church. Of course, when you're teaching the story of Jesus to children, they're going to pick that up and carry it away.
Yes, yeah.
So this Camp Rooted and Raised was a completely alternative form of engaging families. So I want you to tell me first about who Camp Rooted and Raised was for, because it wasn't for families looking for free childcare.
No. There are a ton of VBSs in this area that can offer that type of thing. But what we were really hoping for was for a relational model for this camp. VBS traditionally is very attractional. There's a lot of stuff going on. Like you said, 200 to 300 kids. But Camp Rooted and Raised, it was meant for families that didn't have the resources to find and enroll their kids into things like that. It was meant for families who were craving and desiring community. And it was for every person in the family system. It wasn't just for the youngest child or the elementary age child. It was for the kids, for the teens, and also for the parents. It was for friends of the family. And we, as camp went on, we noticed that kids were bringing friends, parents were bringing friends. It was for the families in Queen Anne that perhaps are living on the margins and need the support of other families and need the support of
You were mentioning before our little break that transportation became an important part of that. Mm-hmm. And I want you to talk about that, but in light of the fact that typically in a VBS, you're working with children through like 5th grade or 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And this, as you mentioned, was very different. We worked with children, plus we worked with teenagers, plus we worked with even adults. So we had a kind of a full cast in terms of what I would say is a multi-generational group. Okay,
absolutely.
But transportation was an interesting piece of it because it speaks to the community we were trying to engage. So tell me a little bit about why transportation was a thing that was decided between you and your partner who put this on, Jade, our mm-hmm. director for our youth ministry. Why did you decide transportation was important?
Well, the idea for Camp Rooted and Raised came from the teens that were just showing up at the church's doors. And they were taking buses to get here, and they were getting on their bikes to get here. But what they couldn't do is bring their younger siblings here on those bikes or on those buses. So ultimately, we saw that they wanted to be here. They didn't have a way to get here. Parents were working. Parents couldn't drive them here. Some of those teenagers don't have driver's licenses. Some of those families don't have a family car. So in order for them to experience community, for them to experience the love of God within the walls of this church, they simply needed to be able to get here. Mm-hmm. And that became a moment of connection as well.
Okay.
Transporting the kids and teenagers was an open door for conversation to happen between our volunteers who were driving them here.
And that's the next question I want to ask you a little bit more about that is, as we look back at Camp Rooted and Raised, which we barely had 2 months ago, or a month ago even, as you look at what really worked, I think the transportation was one of the surprises, because we always think that the most important time is when they're on the campus doing an activity, is something that we've planned.
Yeah.
But that moment in the car or the van when we were moving people around, things happened in those moments. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. When kids and teenagers are having hard or kind of uncomfortable conversations, or just new conversations that they've never had before, they don't want to look an adult in the eye. So being able to have the adult driving and them sitting in the back seat, we noticed that a lot of the kids started to ask questions about church. Some of them started to ask questions about God. They started to ask questions to get to know their driver, who could have been 50 years older than them, 60 years older than them. Some of our drivers learned some Gen Z slang from the kids in the back seat.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. So it took away that discomfort that kids and teenagers tend to experience when interacting with someone they don't know or someone from a different generation, which was key.
Yeah, and we wouldn't have known that had we not said, well, we need to help transport people because we know they use buses and bikes to get here, so we know we need to transport. We didn't expect that to happen.
Right.
As you think about Camp Rooted and Raised, transportation was one of the surprising things that worked. Not only the utility of it, but also this relational piece. What else really worked in your mind as you thought about the camp?
Something that really stood out to me, especially I worked very closely with the kids, was being flexible and being willing to adapt and change as the days went on. Being willing to stop what we're doing, regardless of whatever schedule we had set out, and say, it sounds like you guys are interested in hearing about this Bible story, so let's talk about this Bible story. Or it sounds like you guys are really ready for some hands-on craft time, and jumping into that. It was meeting the needs of the individuals instead of me trying to interpret what I thought they needed.
Yeah, and the way I kind of might think about it too is that the temptation sometimes in work like this is for the church or the leaders to broadcast. It's like, so we have this message and we want everybody to hear it, so we broadcast it like you would a radio station. And this was different. This was much more individualized, much more relational in its context. So not so much of a broadcast as almost a dialogue that was happening with children, with young people, with adults, all of them. As you look back at that week, and maybe I should explain Camp Rooted and Raised, typically like a VBS, for example, would go like Monday to Friday, 9 to 12. That's when they usually operate. Some churches really innovate and do the VBS at night. In our case, we decided to do Camp Rooted and Raised, not Monday through Friday. We decided to do it Wednesday through Saturday, and we did it in the latter part of the afternoon into the early evening, including a meal at the end of it.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know if I had not heard of that before. So when we planned it out, it was like, oh, it worked in that regard. But as you look back on it now, given that kind of context, what kind of things do you think we learned from it? Not necessarily, oh, this didn't work well, but what did we learn from Camp Rooted and Raised we didn't know, like the transportation thing?
I think what we learned is that it is really, really important to equip our volunteers to work with these families. Some were really, really ready to jump in and excited to jump in, but I don't know that we fully understood what being deep into relational ministry looked like at the time. And after camp, it became really clear that it might take a little bit of practice for some people to really sit down and have a conversation with a grumpy teenager who really doesn't want to talk to you, or to get on the ground and just play with a kid and kind of understand what comes out of their play dialogue. I think there was a lot of gray area that people didn't expect. So moving forward, I think it's important that we really equip our volunteers and our congregation to engage meaningfully with these families.
It sounds like a kind of a different kind of, drain is the wrong word, but I think you'll get what I mean. Like if you're doing a VBS for 3 hours and, carting around 15 kids from one station to another during a VBS, that's a certain kind of drain.
Yeah.
It's kinetic, it's activity. This is a different kind.
This takes emotional energy.
Yeah.
Whereas a normal VBS might be physically exhausting, this takes a lot of emotional energy, but it also takes a lot of emotional awareness for yourself and for others. Being able to identify what you're ready for in that moment and how you can be there to support that child, that teen, or that parent.
Yeah, and that's a different kind of drain on people. And what I found in observing it too is that folks who were volunteering were so eager and well-intended, but they didn't expect that. And so the level of exhaustion they might articulate at the end of the day was much more emotional and relational.
Yes.
Not, my body is tired, like you were saying. That was such a profound learning from this. What do you think that says, as an extension of that, what do you think that says about these families, with these children, with these young people, with these adults? What kind of needs do they have relationally that where we sense that drain? What's the need sitting there, you think?
That's a good question. I think a need that these families have is to feel belonging, ultimately, but also to feel understood. I don't know that there's a lot of people in their lives that take the time to hear what their day-to-day life looks like, to hear the struggles that they have in their everyday lives, to hear their background and their stories. And watching some of our volunteers and our congregants meaningfully engage and be really present with them, it was like watching the floodgates open. The stories that we heard from parents, the stories that we heard from teens, and from some of the kids as well.
Yeah.
And while that is draining and in a really unique way for volunteers, it's so important in forming relationship with families.
Absolutely. And when we come back in just a second, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to begin doing with these same families, but on a more regular basis than just a summer camp. All right, we're back. And, we learned a lot of things from Camp Rooted and Raised. And to be honest, I can speak from my standpoint as the lead pastor. Our intentionality with that camp all along from the beginning was to test. We weren't quite sure what would happen. We didn't know how it would work. We didn't know if anybody would come or everybody would come. We had no clue. So now that we've tested it, we're ready to take the next step in that process based on what we learned. And what we're preparing to launch is a new Friday night gathering. It won't meet every Friday night. We're going to probably have one a month or so for the coming year. What's the name of that gathering we're going to do on Friday night, Hannah?
It will be called Friday Night Fellowship.
All right. And so tell me a little bit about what that's going to be like. And we can start with who's it for. That might be an easy question. Yeah.
So Friday Night Fellowship is for everyone. It's for our community members. It's for the families in our community. It's unique in that it's, like I said, low pressure, which is important to our families, but it's also very hands-on. Friday night fellowship stems from the principles of messy church.
Okay. Say more about that.
Yeah. So the format of messy church is that families come in and they share dinner together, can meet time as a community, and then we have a theme or a story for the evening that we're going to share, and families get the chance to be really hands-on and just kind of like get messy, like have fun, be their true selves amongst people who really understand them and are fostering their own spiritual curiosity. And then those activities could include crafts. It could include sensory experiences for the kids. And we'll end the evening with maybe some music and a blessing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's an important piece of it that's different from some of the other Friday night gatherings we've had previously.
Yes.
So before this, a lot of our Friday night gatherings we've had at a church, like about once a month or so, we've been feeding people a dinner, and there's been like some maybe activity we do. We might do like care packages for unhoused people or for our Fostering Hope program or something like that. This has a faith component to it that has been absent from those gatherings. And so some of the activities that we're going to do kind of focus in on that. Can you talk a little bit about how that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's different from Sunday worship in that families get to encounter God, and they get to ask questions about God, and they don't have to come in with this expectation that they know where they're at in their own faith journey, but that it's time to kind of to explore and to play and to get to know community members who might know a little bit more about where they stand in their faith and hear more about their lives and their testimony as well. And the goal of this is not to bring those families to Sunday worship.
And that's an important aspect of this that's different. And I think before we dive into that a little bit, because I think sometimes the expectation is that you do these events like on a Friday or on a Wednesday, you pick whatever day you want, so that it's almost like a free sample at Costco. We want you to try the free sample so we can get you to buy the whole box, which is the Sunday morning experience. So if a child were to come to a kind of a traditional Sunday morning experience, there's a certain set of expectations about what that looks like. Let's say for a child, there might be a circle time with a story, and then there's, some, at least when I was younger, I didn't go to church as a child, but what I hear is they had like flannel diagrams with biblical characters, and they would tell the story and all that. So, and not to make fun of that model, but at the same time, this is a very different experience, because it sounds like this Friday night fellowship is much more tactile.
Yes.
It's much more experiential. It's much more sensory than before. But the most important thing, I think, that I've heard you say is that because these families need a sense of safe space, this gives us a chance to create a space that's different from Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that safety piece of it. What's that look like?
Yeah, Friday night fellowship is their time of worship. Friday night fellowship is these families' sacred space to hear more about God. And this is a safe space because it's non-judgmental.
Okay.
This is a space where they are around other families who understand them.
Yes.
There's no pressure for them to have this come to Jesus moment.
Yeah. Because we trust that they'll have that moment.
Yeah.
But not because we orchestrated it.
Right. Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction. So there is a strong faith component to this. There is in many ways a proclamation of the message of Jesus in the Friday night fellowship. But the way we frame that is in a safe space, so families and individuals can respond to it as God is at work in their life.
Yeah.
We're not trying to coerce or push that.
Right.
God's doing that work.
Yes.
So as we've talked about some of these families, these aren't necessarily what I would call like kind of your traditional family where it's like a husband, a wife, two kids and a dog. I mean, it doesn't, with a white picket fence is the stereotype. These families don't all look like this. Now, some may, but many don't.
No, they're very unique family systems.
What do they, just give an example, without being too specific of any one family, but give us some examples of what some of these families look like.
Yeah, these are single-parent households with a full-time working parent supporting one or more kids. And that's tough, especially in this area. It's families of maybe 6 or more living in a one-bedroom apartment altogether. It's teens and children being raised by maybe grandparents, or maybe they're in the foster care system. Maybe they've been adopted. Some of our teenagers might not go to like your traditional Seattle school. They're all very unique in the way that their family system works. And there might not be a general understanding of the way their family system works.
Yeah. And in some of these families, what I think we've learned too is that some of them really have higher degrees of trauma having occurred in their families, and all the different intersecting systems within the family life. And so that notion of safety becomes so critically important to us, because it's almost like the warning systems are up because of being hurt before.
1,000%. And this is why trauma-informed care is so important when working with these types of families. And just in general, having a good sense of what trauma-informed care looks like is important as a ministry leader. It's very unique, and no interaction and no situation is going to look the same.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where we come back to that kind of relational component you were talking about, where we're sitting with one person and having conversations individually with them rather than broadcasting, right? Yeah. That comes back to that. So, and that leads us into this question about, should we expect to see those people on a Sunday morning? Is that is that the goal?
No.
No.
That's a short answer. No, would I be thrilled to see some of our families on a Sunday morning? Absolutely. But that's not the goal.
Yeah. The goal is that safety. It is to give them an accessing point to that. What I would say, speaking as a pastor theologically, is to the gospel of Jesus. And when I say the gospel of Jesus, that doesn't mean I pray a prayer and go to heaven. That means receiving the whole saving grace of God in a person's life, healing and wholeness that Jesus offers. One of the questions I want to ask about Friday Night Fellowship is, oftentimes in American culture, the way we measure things is by how big it is, where there are a lot of people there, and they have a big impact. How many pizzas did we serve? I mean, those are the questions we ask.
Yeah.
In your mind, the first Friday Night Fellowship is coming up on September what?
19th.
So if that's the case, after 1, 2, or maybe 3 of these over the fall months, how are you going to know if it works?
It's a good question, because I get asked a lot about attendance. It gets exhausting.
Yep.
Well, it's important that we're hearing that families are having meaningful engagement with each other and with the people that are serving at Friday Night Fellowship as well. If I'm hearing that kids are asking their parents to come back to Friday Night Fellowship next month, that means we're doing something right.
Yeah.
If I'm seeing a teenager come to Friday Night Fellowship and engaging in one of our activities, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
It's in no way about attendance, because if we have 5 meaningful conversations and someone walks away from Friday Night Fellowship feeling loved and understood, that means so much more to me than having 100 people in the room.
Yeah, for sure. So as we get close to wrapping up our time, tell me, what can people do? As you know, we've talked a lot about what family ministry looks like and how we're living into this. Not, of course, as a church, we have a Sunday morning experience that's very important to us, but we also have this emerging experience. What can people do? I think there's two ways people can engage. One, they can participate by inviting people just to attend as a family, and the other is support. Like, how can people show up to help make this thing happen? So tell us first about how can people participate?
Right. I think it's important that everyone uses their God-given talents, whether that be cooking. We always welcome people to support in helping to cook a meal for our families, or whether that's if you really enjoy crafts or you're really good at art, there's space for you to support in some of our activity stations. But importantly, it's if you feel that you have the capacity to be present and love on these families that are going to be at Friday Night Fellowship, it is a ministry that you should be a part of.
Okay.
And feel excited to be a part of.
If you're a family listening to this, you have school-age children in your home, what should you do? What could be your step?
Just show up.
Show up.
To show up on September 19th at 5:30 p.m.
All right. And where do they go when they get to the church?
In the FFMC Fine Center.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Good. We'll have some signs out letting people know how to get here and how to get in.
Absolutely.
And how late will we go?
Till about 7.
Okay.
But, if we're having a good time, we'll see.
Might stay a little later. All right. Well, we're excited about this first Friday Night Fellowship. We're excited about what God is doing. And, this is a surprise for us as a church, because when we've been thinking about the ministry God's calling us to as a congregation, if we were all sitting around here 2 years ago, which you were here 2 years ago, your counterpart Jade, she was here 2 years ago, none of us ever would have thought this was what things would look like.
Absolutely not.
So for us, sitting where we're sitting, I'll speak for myself. This feels like a God thing that has just kind of been presented to us.
Yes. I've learned a lot in these past 2 years, and that I really just have to keep my heart open and listen to the Lord and what his plan for me and for this church is, because I would have never guessed that this is where we are now.
And that's I think a good place for us to end. Hannah, I want to thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Being here for our inaugural podcast called Connections. The way of life at First Free Methodist Church is to love people, to connect to Jesus, and serve the world. And that connect to Jesus part is what this podcast is about, how we're helping people do that and how Jesus is using us to bring that connection about. So I'm excited about where this is going to go. Again, thanks for being with us, Hannah.
Thank you.
And stay tuned, everyone, and I hope you can come and participate on Friday night, September 19, and the other events that will be coming soon after that, like this Friday Night Fellowship. For now, I want to bid all of you grace. Thanks for listening to this episode of Connections, and we'll see you again next time.